is a MARii podcast.
This is Mobility World. We are part of the Plugin with MARii podcast network. My name is Ibrahim Sani. I'm joined by the CEO of MARii, Datuk Madani Sahari. How are you, Datuk?
Good, alhamdulillah. Thank you.
Fantastic. Also joining us is Dr. Faisal Anwar, MARii advisor in medical and health data management. So we're going to be talking about the COVID antibody test that you guys are going to be rolling out very soon. Let's take it from the top. First of all, we want to make sure that the listeners and the viewers here are aware that we're recording this prior to the MCO announcement, or might not announce a decision as we speak right now. And while we're undergoing through the MCO 3.0, there's a lot of topic on how we can improve our vaccination programs, make it faster. Right now, we're averaging about 20,000 a day. But it's not just about getting the vaccines. It's about whether or not we are naturally protected, whether or not one has suffered COVID without knowing it, and might be carrying the antibodies already. And which brings about what the DG of Health was talking about, an academic test whether or not one has the COVID antibodies. Meaning that if you know, doesn't mean that you can do much, but it's good to know that you once had a COVID, even though you were not properly
Correct.
screened
Yes,
for
correct,
it. Right. Let's talk about
Yeah.
the antibody test. Dato'.
Okay. The antibody test, or we call it ImmuSafe. That's the name of the product. So it's an antibody test kit. We commercialized it last year in collaboration with our partner Sengenic. Last year we were focusing to get it approved. So now it has been approved by the Medical Device Authority, which is the agency under MOH, the agency that is responsible to approve all these devices related to medical. Now, this is not being approved by the MPRA, because the MPRA is meant for pharmaceutical, drugs that are orally consumed, or something that got to be injected into your body. That would be
Even
under,
cosmetics, if I'm mistaken.
even cosmetic. Yeah. So this is a test, so it's not nothing to be consumed. It's not to be consumed. So it is approved. Approval will be by the MDA. So prior to the MDA approval, it has also been validated by IMR, the Institute of Medical Research, which is also an agency under MOH. So IMR has validated ImmuSafe, of which they've validated it and recorded it as 100% sensitive and 100% specificity. Meaning it is accurate to 100%. Meaning you put in whatever number of samples, it will detect 100% accurate whether you have got the antibodies, yes or no. Yeah.
Okay, so essentially, if I am a person that wants to learn whether or not I have COVID-19 antibodies, I take the ImmuSafe test. It's administered via taking blood. I literally just did the test. I haven't gotten the results, of course. How long, Dr. Faisal, before we know the result?
It's between 2 to 3 days.
Okay, so 48 to 72 hours. And once I know whether or not, say for instance, I have the antibody, and throughout the past year, I have never had to do an RT-PCR test, RTK. Never had to do it because I've been self-isolating. I was under PUS at one time, but I have a suspicion that I have. It's quite impossible for me to say that I was not exposed. People come to the show a lot, come to the studio. But what happens when I know? Let's say I have antibodies. What can I do with it?
I think one thing we need to differentiate is whether you have antibody, whether your antibody is protective or neutralizing, we call it. Yeah. So there are two things. Yeah. So number one is ImmuSafe will be able to tell you that you've got antibody, and whether your antibody is to the S spike or to the nucleocapsid. Here I like to explain a little bit more. The virus, the COVID-19, it has got the crown, which is the S spike we call it, and then the nucleus, which is the nucleocapsid. So when this virus enters your body, so you can produce antibody with to fight against the crown, the spike, or you can fight or you fight against the nucleocapsid, which is the nucleus part of the virus. So we can tell whether you've got antibody against spike or against the nucleocapsid. That's number one. Yeah. Number two, we are able to give a titer, meaning the level. What is the volume? What's the level of antibody that you have produced against the spike or against the nucleocapsid? Number two. Number three, we can say whether this antibody that you had produced are protective, meaning whether with the if it's protective, what it means is the virus, if it enters your body, it basically kills off the virus immediately.
Okay.
If it's just antibody but non-protective, the virus can still enter your cell, it can still multiply, but then your antibody will get into action and then fight against the virus. So meaning if you just have the antibody, you will fall sick, but eventually you will recover because you got the antibody to fight against the virus. However, if you got the protective antibody, you kill the virus even before it multiplies in your cell. So that's why all vaccines now are being checked against these protective or neutralizing antibodies.
Okay. So because there's two types of antibodies involved, and because of IMR proving this product to have 100% specificity, what is the next step? Is it commercialization? What's the next step?
Since the approval last time, so it has been actually been commercialized, and MOH or KKM is using ImmuSafe to check the efficacy of vaccines that are being used in Malaysia. So we have checked the efficacy of Pfizer. We are going to soon check the efficacy of Sinovac as well as AZ or AstraZeneca. Yeah, that's number one. Number two, KKM is using ImmuSafe or MOH is using ImmuSafe to check on the longitudinal study. Meaning, what it means is, Malaysians
Longitudinal study.
longitudinal study. So
Okay.
meaning patients that have recovered from COVID but not vaccinated, you recovered. Meaning you have naturally produced antibodies.
Uh-huh.
So we want to know, the government wants to know whether this naturally produced antibody, how long it will remain in your system. So we call it a longitudinal study. So we have KKM has through IMR, the agency, have collected a few hundred samples of Malaysians that had recovered from COVID-19. And now on monthly basis, we are checking whether their antibody remain or not in their blood. So that's we call longitudinal study. Thirdly is checking the apa kita panggil biomarker study. Biomarker study meaning in our biochip, we are also checking the presence of autoimmune antigen or autoimmune protein. What it means is in your blood, some people have got autoimmune diseases without realizing it. Now there's been many literatures.
Sorry. How does one go about their lives not knowing that they have autoimmune diseases?
I think the clearer definition would be that you have traits, but it's not clinically showing.
Oh.
Mm.
Okay. So it
Yeah.
might come out as false negative.
Correct. It could be, or
Yeah.
it's not thought of because you're not showing.
Yeah,
that
you can't
the
do a
specific
million
clinical
tests.
symptoms.
You're always cognitive of the tests that you want to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the
okay.
thing is, if you have this autoimmune without realizing it, if you get infected by COVID might trigger this autoimmune disease.
Okay.
If it triggers your autoimmune disease at a stage where the COVID is already aggressive in your body, many studies had showed that this way actually the patient could die.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and so for that reason, with Singabulo, so they will patients that coming in, they will check with the presence of this autoimmune protein using our ImmuSafe biochip test kit. So those having this protein, they will be triaged, they will be segregated, then they will be treated for autoimmune before COVID kicks in aggressively.
Okay. So
Okay.
Dato, hang on. Hold your thought. The last time we spoke about ImmuSafe, there was one clear study of a case in Hong Kong where the patient was contracting COVID for the second time in a period of 6 months. Since we spoke, there have been a few other cases all around the world now of patients contracting COVID for the second time.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure, pardon my ignorance, whether or not these patients have taken the vaccine in between those two times, but this does happen, albeit at a very smaller state. Now, would these kind of antibodies determine whether or not a patient or a person have lesser antibodies or be more susceptible to COVID-19?
All right, a very good point you brought up. Now, not just those who have recovered before, and then are getting it infected again. It's also patients who've been vaccinated, all right, who had COVID before, post-vaccination. There are already studies showing that post-vaccination convalescent patients, meaning who have recovered, are again getting RT-PCR positive. That means that they are being diagnosed. Now, what would be the difference here? The difference would be the severity of the disease. Yep. So with knowing that you have neutralizing antibodies, protective antibodies, and also knowing that if you have IgG binding antibodies, there would be a confidence level of the choice of treatment your physician is going to give you. Now, as per what Dato mentioned earlier, the adding on of these autoimmune markers would be very beneficial for those coming in for the second time. Convalescence, that means recovery, or post-vaccination. Now, when they have this, you need to know the autoimmune markers, whereby triage would be important. There would be cases at the same time coming in who are positive but have not had vaccination, have not had an earlier infection. So this would give a very clear comparative study at who would need a ventilator first. So we can take action much faster to help reduce the mortality rate.
As recent as May 18th, the Director General of Health, Tan Sri Nur Hisham, was talking about the new variants being more, volatile. It may come up as negative during PCR tests, but the reaction would be so severe. A lot of these patients suffering from the new variants might end up in the ICU in a very short phase of time, particularly at a time when a patient has been determined to be negative, just a few days down the road, develop very severe respiratory illnesses or condition or symptoms, boom, straight out ICU. New variants come out very fast, and you can name them all you want, from Brazil, from all these Copacabana, whatever, Rio de Janeiro, doesn't matter. How does ImmuSafe address the new variants? Is it immune from immune?
No. You see, when ImmuSafe was first invented, it was based on the Wuhan variant. Yeah. Ever since, there have been many variants coming in. So we are adding the variants onto ImmuSafe.
Okay.
So meaning we can check Indian variant, Brazil variant, South African variant.
So it's like a software update. Pardon me.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
an update. It's an update.
Okay. All right. So right now, back to my earlier question just now. So what does one do when one knows about the kind of antibodies that one has? Is it
Yeah.
still the
So,
immuno
well-
passport that we spoke about last
Well, you know,
time?
if you know that you have the antibody, the IgG binding, which is non-protective, then you know that you could be infected and you could fall sick. So therefore, you need to adhere even more strictly to the SOP. You know, that's number one. Number two, if you know that you don't have any antibody, there's even a clear indication that you need to really be strict in terms of the SOP adherence. Yeah.
Okay.
Thirdly, if you know that you got protective antibody, at least you know that you are somewhat protected against the COVID-19. But we
So
do
you
not
can go.
recommend you not to follow the SOP, because we have yet to achieve herd immunity.
Of
You know,
course.
yeah. So Malaysian has yet to achieve herd immunity, even if you have protective antibody. You know that you're protected, but you still should adhere to the SOP.
So Dr. Faisal, do we know like
Sorry, if I could add on to
Yeah,
what
sure.
Dr. Madani just mentioned. Now, of course, you want to convert this info into activity of daily living. All right. Now, this would bring us back to the Badminton World Federation example of Saina. Now, while at that time, before vaccination started, and she was due to appear in Thailand for the competition, the international competition. Now, she was RT-PCR positive, finished the convalescence period, but she was banned from joining the tournament. Now, what happens is that the Indian government basically started neutralizing antibody studies in February 2021 at a large scale. Now, they got her neutralizing antibody levels, protective antibody levels, and her IgG binding antibody levels, and submitted to BMF, which was recognized internationally and allowed her to enter, join the competition. So this was pre-vaccination. Now, taking this in mind, if you're having important meetings, if you're having a workload that you need to complete, so this is where proving that you have neutralizing antibodies to continue work in a pandemic where herd immunity has not been achieved. This will be very important.
So similarly, in opening up the economy, so those having protective antibody, they should be allowed to work.
Do you think that this should be integrated into MySejahtera?
We think so.
Yeah, we strongly believe.
So okay, let me rephrase that. What are the steps taken by you guys in terms of integrating this into MySejahtera?
Oh, we have spoken with MKM. Actually, we have brought this over right to the number one, right to the meeting with Dato' Ismail Sabri. He has already directed for this be integrated into MySejahtera, and now we are still in discussion with MOH, to review how this integration could happen.
You see, this is the thing about the situation right now. People think they are aware of who is at risk, who is not, who isn't. People with comorbids, people above 60, people with respiratory issues.
Mm.
I mean, I am asthmatic, for instance. You know, so I would be a little bit more cognizant that if I do get, it wouldn't be as easy as most, I suppose. Um, what does antibody results show so far in terms of trials, in terms of, do people with no comorbidities, younger people have more antibodies, for instance? What do we know?
Okay. So basically, with IgG binding and neutralizing protective antibodies. Now, let's talk about post-vaccination, meaning vaccination has started now. So, why is this important? Especially with comorbidity, someone that's aged, someone, and of course, not to forget those who are immunocompromised, which is a very important factor. Now, you need to know this because there is a latency period. You will have a peak post-vaccination or post-infection, and then the latency drops. Because this disease, this pandemic is so new, we don't have enough data to show how long does this protective mechanism last.
That's why the debate on second dose, third dose, even,
Exactly.
or everybody should get first dose, let the second dose wait. All that debate is still happening across the
Now,
countries.
for someone that's healthy, maybe it's not that big an issue, but someone with comorbidity, someone with uncontrolled diabetes, someone with uncontrolled hypertension, post-stroke patients, immunocompromised patients, leukemic patients, post-chemo, organ transplant, HIV positive, AIDS, this becomes a very important factor. It's a very important determining factor in their survival. So you need to know IgG binding and protective mechanism. You need to know when the latency starts. When does it drop? So this is where we need this data to help them get the second dose, the third dose, or a booster shot if necessary through vaccination. So this becomes very important now since vaccination has started.
Okay, we'll go for a short break. Fantastic. This is a fantastic conversation, but we'll go for a short break. When we come back, we're going to be discussing more with Dr. Faisal and Datuk Manani of MARii.
This is a MARii podcast.
Thanks for staying on with us. I have with me Dr. Faisal, the medical advisor of MARii, Datuk Manani, the CEO of MARii, rolling this out. My first question is, why is it MARii that is rolling this out? Why not somebody from KKM? Why not, I don't know, Mosti? Why you guys?
Well, good question. MARii is all about data, IoT, robotics, automation. When the pandemic started, we were very aggressive in terms of designing the apa nama tu the respiratory the ventilator.
Mobile
We
ventilators,
actually
yeah.
designed 3 mobile ventilators, and at the same time we also started to produce aprons and masks and so on. And during that time, that was like a year ago, yeah. And then during that time we know that vaccine is something out of touch.
Yeah.
It's difficult, it's out of touch. But then we were already looking into how do you confirm that somebody has protection or somebody has the antibody. So then we came across Sangenic, which is a local company, and then we discussed with Sangenic. Then from there, then we said, this is a good product that should be commercialized in Malaysia. But of course, Sangenic, they when they commercialize, I mean they produce the chips, okay, but they are not really in the business of going through data management. The fact
The
that
chips
COVID,
you're referring to is the microarray
the
chips.
microarray chips, the biochip, the biochip. They're not really in the business of data management. Say, for example, the title that all the patients that they will be tested, and then the title of the antibodies are being determined and whatnot, and then the results. How do we transfer? I mean, these are all very confidential things, and how do we actually get people to be conveyed with their results and so on? So these are about cloud services, about IoT, big data management, and so on. So we said, perhaps this one area, we could help as part of our, actually, MARii, we have started also setting up our medical engineering unit. So we don't do medical. We have our partner to do that.
Setting up, so it's still a present tense. It's not
No. We have set up our medical engineering unit.
Okay.
But
Congratulations.
we don't do the medical stuff, but we do the IoT, the robotic, the automation part of it.
Okay.
So for example, in this diagnostic, while the diagnostic of this biochip is done manually by a technician using hand and so
So
on.
the
So
one,
we
say for instance,
automate.
the one that I just did, for
No,
instance.
the one is just the one is just blood
Okay.
taking. So from there, that blood will be diagnosed in the lab.
Uh-huh.
So normally technicians, they will use manually. They will manually diagnose and then,
Prepare the
they prepare
chip,
the
prepare
chips
the
and so on and so
blood.
forth.
So you're looking at automating it.
We have already automated it.
Wow.
Yeah, we automate. So
So you can
meaning,
scale.
yeah, exactly. The whole idea is, the cycle time, if it's per technician, the person can do probably about,
Mm.
I think 20 minutes
Yeah.
per slide.
Yeah.
So we automate it, we can like few minutes per slide.
Yeah.
So that has been done. So that's
Yeah.
part of our, and then of course the cloud services. We're talking about people all over Malaysia wanting to do antibody test kit. How do we get these results to them in a confidential manner? So there's the cloud services. We were already thinking about the possibility of having digital passport. How do we get people to travel, and how do we prove that they've got the antibody, or they've got a digital vaccine certificate and what have you?
Mm.
So we need blockchain technology. So
Mm.
those are the things among MARI's forte. So until today, not only we've got ImmuSafe, but soon we will also be launching together with a partner. We call it Immunity, which is actually a digital platform using blockchain that can allow data from ImmuSafe, the digital vaccine certificate. All of that will be transferred from Malaysia to any country that you're going, and all of that will be going through using a blockchain technology to make sure the authenticity of the content of whatever that the country is asking for. So that's how we come in, and now we are responsible for the commercialization of ImmuSafe in Malaysia as well as for the ASEAN countries.
All right. We'll get into the whole commercialization aspect first. I wanna later, but first I wanna talk about the hunter-gatherer kind of dilemma that you guys are facing. Hunter in the sense that you need to sell, you need to get more people to do this, and perhaps have a continuous monitoring of them. Say for instance, I have taken it. Perhaps you guys want to monitor me, how I'm doing, whether or not I'm immunocompromised, whatever it may be. And then the gatherer part, which is, once you get a lot of people on immunosafe, you just need to data mine it, share it with KKM or Ministry of Health or any other ministries out there, mostly whatever, and make sure that it is the data is translated into meaningful information. Do you guys have that kind of capacity to go to market to commercialize while at the same time data mine and make it worthy, the data that you're going to be sending it over
Sure.
across to your partners?
Well, in terms of commercialization, we are working with several partners. We are working with Pantai. Half an hour, I mean, an hour ago, I was in a discussion with KBJ. KBJ, whole chain of KBJ is also coming in as our partner, not only to diagnose but also to offer the ImmuSafe as a service.
Okay.
So we are also working with Neogenics, another private laboratory in Malaysia,
Mm.
and soon we'll be talking with other hospitals as well as laboratories all over
Do
the
you have like a
country.
ballpark figure of the people that the sales figure?
Oh, well, number one, in order to determine the herd immunity in the country, we need to at least minimum continuously monitor 30% of the of the vaccinated population. 30%.
Monitor
We need to
30%.
monitor 30% of the population that has been vaccinated, and 30% has got to have protective antibody. So meaning if we probably, I mean, meaning we need to do more than 30%.
Yeah.
We need to confirm
Yeah.
30% of the
Yeah.
vaccinated population
Yeah.
have got the protective
But we're
antibody to
talking
confer
millions.
that Malaysia has herd immunity.
So it's like 30% of the 70% of the 32 million people,
Yes.
which is in the
Yes.
millions.
Yes. Recently, we have also signed the MOU with Suranjaya Koperasi Malaysia. They've got 6 million members that they want to test on ImmuSafe.
Yeah,
So we have
yeah.
signed the MOA with them as well. And the other big GLCs are also coming in. DRB, Produa. Many other companies are also coming in.
Yeah, okay. And then the translation of the data to be meaningful for the users?
Yeah, that's the thing. Antibody. Yeah. Well, MARii, we have developed a specific database pertaining to this data that is coming from ImmuSafe. So you are talking about, for example, autoimmune diseases. I mean, we've got data now for anybody having autoimmune diseases. So the guy having that illness, will know lah, because basically we will be reporting to him that, hey, be careful. You've got this autoimmune potential, could be triggered if you get infected by the COVID or something else.
Mm.
So yeah, the person will be made available, and I mean the person will be notified about his condition, So our system is ready to auto notify the person, on a basis, on a basis that is medically fit for that particular illness. Okay. Now the thing here is integration with KKM, and this is where actually when we discuss and when we presented UNICEF to the highest level of MKN, at the level of being chaired by Wabi Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri. And this way, he instructed for this integration to happen so that, imagine if we could connect this to the database of those having infected, they are in the SIM card database of MySejahtera, meaning we know people that have been
Yeah.
infected, and then correlate that with the level of protective antibody that this person has. So that really will give us a good flow of where in Malaysia, yeah, you've been infected,
Mm.
but you got antibody, and where are these people in the country having the protective antibody? So there's the sort of correlation and mapping, that can be done once the integration is done between us and KKM.
But academic studies,
So,
things like
sorry,
yeah,
if
go
I could
on.
just add on to what Dato said. On the macro level, right? Definitely, the data that we have would help the government in managing resources, in the sense that how to better manage ICUs, how to better manage HDWs, high dependency wards. Who to isolate, who not to isolate. So this would help manage resources at the MOH level. But the bigger question will be, which vaccine works the best for Malaysians?
Yeah.
We are a multi-ethnic group.
I mean, if KJ is listening to this podcast, he'll be saying all the vaccines, whatever
And
vaccines that
all
we
the
can get
vaccine
right
works,
now.
but which works the best? Dollars and cents.
Yeah, but we
No,
can't.
no, no.
Beggars can't be choosers, right? I mean,
no. Don't get us wrong. We have had meetings with KJ on like more than half a dozen times.
Yeah.
The latest was 2 days ago. So
Okay.
KJ KJ is the minister that's instructed the KKM to check the efficacy of the vaccine that he's procuring, using IMISAF. And then after this, he wants to know which of the vaccine is most efficient in Malaysia, and then to continue from there on.
Yeah. Okay.
So
For instance,
he is
if it's
using this.
if it's more
Yeah.
on Pfizer, for instance,
Yes,
then go
exactly.
with more Pfizer,
Yeah.
something like that.
So he knows already the results of Pfizer. So he's already waiting for the results on Sinovac and AstraZeneca and so on. So he's aware of the studies that we are undertaking with KKM.
Okay. And so the follow-up question to this is on academic research, right? Something that can be long tail, something slower. What can we learn from this pandemic sort of questions, right? Do you feel that these kind of data can be open sourced? Universities can tap into this kind of data, learn from it. Perhaps people in public health, people doing epidemiology, something like that. They can use this kind of data.
Yes, definitely. Even as of now, we are already working with IMR, and we've also, I think, discussed with UKM,
UKM and
maternity,
USM,
the
yeah.
Ops and Gynae, and also USM. So it's definitely a very important from the academic point of view. Basically, like I said earlier, latency period, we really need to know this. What can we do to improve the latency period? And secondly, the SOPs that we're doing, do we need to add on, or do we need to reduce the certain SOPs while the pandemic is still going until there's a global herd immunity? So these data that we collect right now, especially in a multi-ethnic group like Malaysia, I think academically, it's a gold mine.
Okay, so moving forward, right? And we're still in the heat of the pandemic, but it seems like if the world is to end, it's going to be pathogens like viruses or bacteria. It's not going to be zombie apocalypse or whatever. Do you think that this can be templated into future possible pandemics or future infectious diseases so that
Yeah,
we can learn more
definitely.
about it?
Definitely. Viruses, bacteria, they're all protein based. And technology behind the IMISAF is the fact that Sangenix, our partner, is able to, what we call it, produce, no, they're able to produce the specific folding protein specific to the virus or to the protein. So any virus or any pathogen that's coming out there, what's important is to be able to identify the correct folding for that for the correct folding of protein of the virus, and then to sort of like put that into the chip for proper identification and traceability of antigen or antibody specific to that particular pathogen.
Okay, I got two more questions before we end this podcast. The first of the two is, if people want to get this right now, over the counter, not through KPJ or Pantai or whatever your partner is, how do they go about it?
Or they want a video, they can come to VHG. Yeah.
VHG.
VHG is
Yep.
VHG here in Ampang. They can take the blood, or they can go to Neogenics. They can go to Pantai, and then there'll be other clinics as well. They'll be coming on board,
So the price range?
For the price range for individual is about 280 to 300. Or if you were to do it individually, so if you were to do it in a package, then I think the clinic might offer you something somewhat lower.
Okay, that's the first of the two. Second of the two is direct to consumers. Have you guys decided to reach out to, I don't know, Shopee, Lazada, set up a .com so people can put it in their shopping carts straight to homes?
This one, while you can prick yourself and send it to the lab, but the diagnostic has got to be a lab based. It's not a rapid test kit. So I think at this point in time, selling it over Shopee or e-commerce it's not recommendable at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still a fully serology lab-based test, which carries a whole lot of information. So it's very difficult to change it into a rapid test kit where it's home deployed.
Yeah, but if it's intravenously pulled out the blood, and let's say you have a technician, the nurse, doctor.
That's what
you can go to the
Dr. Wen
clinic.
was saying, that we do deployment, meaning like, for example, your organization, your
No, we'll
company has
be-
done vaccination. You want to check everyone, so we can deploy.
Actually, next week we'll be talking to a few.
This is the problem with
group-
listing down questions, because there's follow-up questions to this. Can the process be simplified to a point where it can be as simple as a needle prick, like how
Can.
people do
We've got
diabetes
that.
tests?
We've got that already done. So I mentioned earlier, you can just prick your finger, and then send the sample to the lab that we have.
But people do that all the time.
prescribed.
The DNA,
Yes, you
23andMe.
Yes, it's doable. We've got that. We call it a Seromax, which is a special tool for you to prick the blood and put your blood
Yeah,
onto
the
that paper,
container.
the container. Then you send it to the lab
ship
that
it
we
off.
have prescribed.
And maybe some sort of serum to make it like,
No, it's using a special matrix dense paper, so you don't need a serum. You just need to prick and put it into the spots designated. Seal it.
So when are we going to get that version 2.0?
We've got it already.
We've got it now.
We've got
Okay.
it already. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just that now, hospitals, clinics, they are doing it. So they do the intravenous.
Do the complicated, why not?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This was a very, very, very enlightening conversation. That was Dr. Faizal Anwar, MARii Advisor in Medical Health and Data Management, of course, Datuk Madani Sari. Congratulations, gentlemen.
you.
Hopefully we can have more of this in the future.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim.
So this has been a conversation on Mobility World with Plugin with MARii. If you've missed any part of this podcast, just head on to either Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Search for MARii. That's MARII. Again, MARii, MARII. There's plenty of conversations like this that can be found on those platforms. Also, if you're listening to us, you can also be watching us as well. Just head on to all our social media outlets on YouTube and on elsewhere. And perhaps after listening to us for about 1 hour, you can also watch us again for another 1 hour. Why not? Until then, thanks very much for listening in. My name is Ibrahim Sani.
This is a MARii podcast.